Please has raised this issue. Deputy has 4 minutes to make an initial statement.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for taking this. And I know the Minister has been quite active on the issue and has spoken at length and has also tried to take action on the issue. I believe we need to put in place a process to examine and encourage the potential of a building swap between the Bank of Ireland and College Green and the Central Bank on Dame Street. This could be facilitated by the Minister and the State to actively encourage them down that road. College Green, I believe, and many Dubliners believe, has the potential of becoming one of our finest public spaces. It was previously known as Hogan Green and is also thought to be the burial grounds of Vikings and the Viking kings in Dublin. And I think we all very much remember last year Barack Obama and also Bill Clinton that spoke in this area, and we see the potential of how that space can be used. It's flanked by our oldest university, Trinity College, and the classic buildings run into Dame Street. The building now occupied by the Bank of Ireland was the first Parliament. It's the world's first purpose-built two-chamber Parliament. It was built in the 18th century and the foundation stone was laid in 1729, and the Irish Parliament sat there until the Act of Union. After that, it served as a military garrison and art gallery and was bought by the Bank of Ireland. I think it's time to return this building to public use and see a social dividend from the bailout of the banks. It is known by all as a visitor spot for thousands of tourists from both home and abroad, and the Bank of Ireland now uses it as its principal branch. And I know the ministers have had discussions again and weren't successful discussions with the Bank of Ireland. But I believe the ownership of this building by the state has its potential. We have a 15% shareholder, so we have a little bit of muscle in trying to influence and pursue it. We still have the power, which I think we underestimate, because there is public opinion out there, and I think the public wants to see this building returned to the state and to public use. And the whole area in front of it, I think, for historical reasons, it's very important. The central bank just up the road in Dame Street, I think, there is a synergy and it's an opportunity to see that building swap. The decision by the central bank to move to the Docklands allows this to happen for the first time. And like Sam Stevens' designed modernistic building probably is a much better building for a bank, and move back the Parliament building to the state. I think we had to actively seek the building to stay, and I would ask you to work with the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Tourism, Dublin City Council and the Central Bank. These are the stakeholders to make sure it's transferred. It's an ideal building to house the Central Dublin Lending Library, currently located in the Ilac Centre. It would be an excellent performance space for theatre, for musical groups, and also the potential to use the house as a future regional assembly for Dublin. Following the local government reform, really to use this as a bank, it was designed as a parliament. It's a historical landmark in the city. So, Minister, what I'm asking you to do is redouble your efforts to look at the potential of the central bank, the location of the bank as a parliament building, putting it back maybe possibly as a role for the regional Dublin Authority through the former local government, to see it as a theatre space. Like as I said earlier on, when Barack Obama visited Dublin, Bill Clinton was here and they gave the speeches, when it was used at New Year's Eve for a concert, it really shows the fantastic potential that whole area has. And I think if there was one social dividend that we could see through this crisis, something that the citizens of Dublin and Ireland could see as a dividend, as a tourist attraction to the city, I think this government has to bring every piece of influence we have of encouraging the Bank of Ireland to do a building swap with the central bank, who are moving to the Docklands, and for this building to be returned to the citizens of Ireland to gain the potential that we have from tourism and to enhance the city. Minister Tan, thank you, Chair.
I now call the Minister State with 4 minutes.
Thank you, and I will bring that very strong message back to the Minister. But I totally agree with you in relation to buildings. Like I had a group of American tourists who we convinced to stay in County Meath for a couple of days instead of Dublin, but they got their day in Dublin anyway. But like they were so proud, to see such a fine city. I think anyone that has come into our city in the last number of years, the magnificent buildings we have, and people love, including our own people, love going to visit historical buildings. So I'll read this on behalf of the Minister anyway. The Central Bank of Ireland's principal offices are contained in the famous Stevenson and Gibney design building in Dame Street, Dublin. This very distinctive and assertive building, which was controversial when it was built in the late 1970s, was specially designed bespoke accommodation for central bank functions. It has been reported the Central Bank are proposing to move its headquarters into what is currently a partially completed building in Dublin Docklands, once that has been fitted out in about 3 years' time. I'm advised that the Central Bank also uses a number of other offices in Dublin for its staff. I also note that another major banking property in Dame Street is coming on the market soon. The Bank of Ireland at College Green is also a very distinctive building and is probably one of the most iconic buildings in Dublin City. This building was the first purpose-built parliament in Europe. It was completed in 1739 and it served as Ireland's parliament until the Act of Union in 1801. After the 1801 Act of Union, generations of Irish parliamentarians, from Daniel Connell through to Charles Stewart Parnell, Isaac Butt and others, campaigned for the creation of a new Irish Parliament, which ironically almost happened. A return of the College Green building to the Irish people to public use could be a tangible response to the voices of history. The design of Edward Lovett Pearce for the Parliament building was revolutionary in the pre-revolutionary age. The building was effectively semicircular in shape, occupying almost 1.5 acres of ground. The building itself also underwent extension by the architect James Gandon, also responsible for 3 of Dublin's finest buildings, the Custom House, the Four Courts and the King's Inns. Pearce's building was to open directly onto the green. The principal entrance consists of iconic columns extending around 3 sides of the entrance triangle and forming the letter E. There was also status representing Hibernia, Fidelity and Commerce above the portico. James Gandon was responsible for the new entrance at the east of the building faction on the Westmoreland Street, rendered distinctive by its Corinthian columns. Robert Park was then responsible for the extension to the west side onto Foster Place. Thus, this building is not only important for the parliamentary point of view, it also tracks the history and progress of Irish architecture design through the 18th and 19th centuries. The Bank of Ireland at College Green has been chosen by 2 of the great political orators of our time as the site for their seminal speeches in Ireland, namely Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. The building is at the hub of the nation's capital, the meeting and convergence point of the main arteries of the city. It is situated close to the original heart of historical Dublin and is almost of a vintage with Trinity College. To Dublin, College Green has the potential to become a cultural and iconic counterpoint to the great city centre nuclei and city squares of the world. The Piazza San Marco in Venice, Trafalgar in London, the Place de Concorde in Paris, Times Square in New York without its craziness, St. Peter's in Rome, the Piazza Navona in Rome, Piazza del Campo in Siena. These are places I never heard of before, some of them. Covent Garden in London, Hotel de Ville in Paris, Plaza Santa Ana in Madrid, Federation Square in Melbourne, Tiananmen Square in Beijing, and the Grand Place in Brussels. Minister Dean has had a number of engagements with the senior management of the Bank of Ireland in relation to the College Green building. For the Bank of Ireland's part, it regards this building as a jewel in their crown, commercially as well as architecturally. The College Green branch of the Bank of Ireland is probably its busiest branch in the network, and I'm advised contributes very significantly to the group's bottom line. Minister Dean feels that it is implied in the Deputy's motion that a new cultural asset can simply be created by arranging a straight swap of one building for another. The idea of a swap actually implies that the Central Bank would have to surrender their current headquarters building in Dame Street, and thus would involve a very large write-down of asset value on their balance sheet. He doubts very much if this would be acceptable to the Department of Finance. In addition, there would be very substantial costs involved in, first of all, of adapting to the College Green building to cultural uses, professional fees, and then maintaining the building into the future. The scale of funding required for such a project is currently beyond that available to my department. However, Minister Dean will continue where appropriate to engage with the Bank of Ireland senior management on the matter of this building, lest the policy with regard to this building and circumstances should change. I'm not so sure if that's the reply you wanted to hear, but...
Sinead. Now, Deputy Humphreys has a further 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you, Minister, for your response, and I welcome the Minister for Transport into the Chamber. And really, what I wanted to do with this debate topical issue today is to try and get people to start thinking about the Bank of Ireland, the space outside of it between them and Trinity College. So not necessarily, I didn't expect a response that we'll organise the swap between, but what I want to do is put out that idea. And the Minister for Transport mentioned there launched the Lewis, the connection of the Lewis lines. And if you could think of College Green with the Lewis line, Trinity College on one side, arts, literature in the central bank, using the space, the Senate Hall for, with the reform of local government for a regional assembly, engaging people back in local democracy in the Greater Dublin area. I believe by developing that as a piazza, and the areas that you mentioned, would be not only just good for Dublin, but would be good for the nation. It would give us a real positive centre. If you could think of a Christmas market spreading between Trinity College, Dame Street, and the Central Bank, with just the Lewis line coming through, it would be a real cultural hub. You know, you think of our grades of literature, where we could celebrate those in the Central Bank. You think of the great musicians and how we could utilise that piazza with the backing of the Central Bank and the beautiful lighting. Yes, we are financially constrained, but I don't think that should rule out at this stage of having a vision on how a city that I'm passionate about, and I think many members of this chamber are passionate about. I think this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We will never see the transformation of the piazza in front of there. When we're running a Lewis line through that area, we have to think of this generation, the next generation, and a hub, a cultural hub in the city.
Thank you, Deputy.
And may I just, you know, I think it's 360 million, I think, Minister, in relation to joining up the Lewis line. Small proportion of that could develop that whole piazza. I think public opinion and pressure from the state will bring around the Bank of Ireland in some manner. It may not be a building swap, but we have to keep a concentration in this area that there is a social dividend from the banking sector to the citizens of Dublin and to the citizens of Ireland as a whole. Thank you, Chair, for your word.
I now call the Minister of State for the final 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not going to take 2 minutes, but I accept and I can see your passion that you have this thought out very, very clear. And I have no doubt I will bring back the message to Minister Beanan. But when you believe in something very strong, you should never give up on it. You know, and you're right about Dublin City, and you know we're all very proud of it. And what you've outlined there would convince me. But the whole thing, of course, is always to convince the bank to get a part out of it. And as far as I'm concerned, the bank is only as good as what comes out of it. If you come out of a hayshed or out of a fine building, it's the results that come out of it that count at the end of the day. But you're talking about history, and there's an awful lot of history attached to this city, and that's what's going to bring our people to it, not alone next year, but every other year. So, thank you very much.